And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is that time yet again here on a fabulous Friday night. We're stacked here all weekend long. We got the Tyson and Jake Paul fight tonight. We got John Jones tomorrow with Steve Bay, and then it's a whole slate of NFL games. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. Wherever and however you may be watching and listening, thanks for making us part of your day. Chase Steffes with us here tonight. Chase, you'll be busy, but I will tell you what. I mean, I didn't want to spoil too much of the games from yesterday, but Prime Predictions Week 11, there's about 4 games I really like we talked about, but that was interesting last night. I said, whether win or loss, it didn't change my point of view about either team, but it did kind of change a little bit of a point of view about what I feel with Philadelphia after last night.
Yeah, no, I still think that the Commanders are the best team in that division, and I still believe wholeheartedly that the Commanders have the chance to not only take that division, but become one of the top 2 seeds in the NFL, or in the NFC. Only because, their defense is a little weak, but it's getting better with each passing week in terms of, the way that Dan Campbell's been able to get them acclimated. And Marshawn Lattimore is not even playing at this point. Wait until he gets acclimated into that defense and figure out what they're going to do. But the thing is, Terry McLaurin was shut down most of the game yesterday.
One pass last night, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, when it comes around the next time for the Eagles to play the Commanders, look for the Commanders to step up and play a lot better offensively, because I know that they're going to take away a lot from this, and they're going to implement it into the next time that they play. And I know that the Commanders are on a 2-game losing streak right now, but they are going to come back next week firing on all cylinders and win.
So that's the thing. And to talk about last night's game is I've kind of seen this, is that in this kind of predicament, the Commanders, as I've said multiple times, Chase being my witness for this, the Commanders are just riding this moment. That's what they're doing. And you know what? It's all good, because that's where the Commanders know it's not priming up for a big year this year. It's priming for an even bigger year next year. So with all that money in the cap space, but what we really got to think about is what in the hell was that out of Philadelphia in the first half? I mean, it looked like both teams were gassed, in my opinion. The only one who I would consider, who I think has been such a strong acquisition, is Saquon Barkley. But this right now, with what you're seeing with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they just extended their division lead. So, I mean, as of that, I'm hoping that this does not become with what we predicted out of the Philadelphia from the start of this year, just like where they left off of last year. Because then that would just be complete and total disaster. Nick Sirianni, like I've said before, this is why we continuously have criticism of Sirianni, is because there are times where it feels like he's kind of in his own way. Sometimes you got to move out of it. Now, I think Jalen Hurts, because he did not start out the gate that strong. He didn't. And he avoided a big-time injury before halftime, which was, again, it was holding everybody's breath in Philadelphia. But I was right about one thing. Their defense was continuing to stay strong. The Commanders are primed in a better spot than most people think that they are. Okay, this year may not be it, but next year's where they'll make the jump. I love Jaden Daniels, but like I said, the offensive line needs improvement. Terry McLaurin was left to 1 catch last night. And so all of this stuff, I know Commander fans, they would love to have taken this game against Philadelphia on the road in a tougher environment. I get that. But at the same time, it's not an easy environment to play in. Okay, Philadelphia, you know what you're getting with the fan base. I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be strong. And by the way, I'm sure the fan base was brutally honest about what they saw from Philadelphia last night. I mean, because the defense in itself were playing up to their strengths. They were holding them down, only having to give up at least a score, okay, in the first quarter. But from the third and fourth, the last two in the second half, I mean, the Commanders were almost surging back in. But you know what's funny is Chase is my witness. This is why I talked about the over-under at 49.5. I did not trust it one bit. I thought it was way too much of a reach. Vegas was not fooling me there. That's why I said take the under. In a division rival game, a Thursday night short week, there's no way that these two teams would have combined went over 49.5. There's no way. So the Eagles, what you really have to consider on the back of your head is that this is yet again sloppy work, yet they still managed to get the dub. But this is not something that you're going to walk into the playoffs looking like this. It would be truthfully embarrassing for all their stars. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, a lot of their defenses. It would be truly embarrassing. But this is why you've got to clean up this mess. I just felt like, and every team goes through this in the NFL, shortened week. If you're coming back battered from last week, usually you get tired and you get gassed in a short week. And that's what both of them felt like. But in Philadelphia, on the road, not going to be easy for the Commanders. But they did show up and at least get 18 points. I do feel like there's a part of that the Commanders would have wanted to adjust to. But this is why we were also honest about Cliff Kingsbury. I like him as an offensive coordinator. I just don't think he has enough of the oomph in him to be a head coach. And I think he verbally mentioned about that. He didn't want to take on that head coaching job because of the stuff he then had to go through in his tenure in Arizona. He knew how to make an offense, but could not have the culture strength to really change an entirety of a team. Like a Harbaugh, like a Reed, like most of those big-time culture-setting coaches. So that was not for Cliff Kingsbury. But in an offensive scheme, he can make that in like a span of probably a day. He can make it happen. You see exactly with what you got, and then he'll make it work. So I just right now, the Commanders are riding this. Sure, they lost in a short week. No big deal. They're going to move forward with it because clearly they are the second best team in the NFC East. But they're not going to get past the Lions. They're not going to get past the Eagles again for like a third time. And I don't think they'll have enough of the firepower to really get past the Niners if you want to be honest about that. So again, but it's priming you up for what you have right now and what you could eventually get in the near future. So, this is interesting. So Chase and I, we talked about this off the air last night, and I think it was kind of something clear that I wanted to be able to bring onto the program. So Jordan Schultz ended up coming out and he gave a report about Colorado's Deion Sanders. Now, we know right now with where the draft picks are looking like, Chase and I did our top 10 draft picks so far because I think it's clear with the teams we have, and at least with the players that we believe and predict these are going to be their landing spots. But it could change the closer we get into the draft in April. So what we're witnessing right now, and I have respects for Deion for what he's doing right now in Colorado. He's changed this program all the way through to where Colorado now in the second year is bowl eligible. And if all things go well in the next few weeks, they could sneak into the playoffs. But we don't know that yet. But we can respect what he's doing now because ultimately he's changed the culture. He's changed the way that this program is meant to be looking like. And just in the span of the 2 years he's been there, because that's extremely hard. Colorado was averaging at least close to 1 to 2 wins a year. Okay. You know how extremely hard that is to have to pull out a program like that that's had no track record of relevance for a very long time. So I give Deion that. But the speculation is, because we know Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, and probably Shiloh, but I think he's kind of more of the middle of the pack draft prospect. But as far as the top two, we know they're leaving for the draft. They're very highly talented. But the conversation that was being talked about is that Deion would be in the rooms and would basically be listening to a lot of teams, speculating on a bunch of teams, what their conditions are, what their culture setting is, and all the rest of it. Are they offensive, defensive coaches? What is it that they have? What's their roster? What's their build? He would be in there in those rooms. Now, initially, with what I predict may happen, because a lot of people may speculate this very differently, is Shedeur Sanders, we know, is going to get drafted. And I think the best situation he can go into is the Raiders. He's close with Tom Brady. He's a minority owner. At the same time, Raiders will have enough money in the cap to now go and buy an offensive line, go and get defensive players, and you can maybe go and get yourself another weapon in the draft if you really wanted to. I think that's the best outcome and the best situation that you have, and you have Gardner Minshew for one more year. Now, if it came to other teams, like let's say the Giants or the Browns or even the Titans or even a couple of other teams, I know some people would think that the Browns, and we talked about this before, they may in the end, you are with where you are landed in your organization. Okay, where you land does matter. Now, I think the outlier for Cleveland is because you have Kevin Stefanski as your head coach. That's the biggest outlier for this organization. But at the same time, it doesn't seem like that this is an organization that would be pivoting backwards. The only reason that would happen is because we know the history of the Haslams. We know that there's been desperation moves over the years, and that's kind of where that would stall. But if you really want to look at this realistically, I believe that Shedeur Sanders, wherever he ends up landing up to, you're hoping that the coach is right. You hope that the roster's bolstered, or if they go and get more pieces or draft some, but hopefully that they're building a track record of relevancy. But that's why I think the Raiders would be in the perfect spot. But Deion being in those rooms, okay, I know people would think, he's going to dictate everything. He's going to basically make the decisions for his son. Sometimes, listen, as a parent, of course you would want your kids to be set up for successes. I'm not going to go against that mentality because, of course, my family would want me to be set up for success. I mean, think about it. Straight out of high school, I started work, and then I went in and got an associate's. Okay, because I was chasing for a career job that I wanted to be in. It was a career. All right. And they would set me up for successes. You go into a job that is paying you well. You're not paying student loans. Each time when you get a paycheck, you're paying towards your tuition, your books, all the rest of it. You're setting up for successes. That's the big thing. So I can understand it from a parent's perspective with Deion Sanders wanting the best for his kids. And, again, I would not want my kids to be in turmoil. I don't want them to be going into like an organization like Carolina, who's in a turmoil organization because you have an incompetent owner and nothing's really changed. Now, granted, they're not going to do that because I think Bryce Young's playing for his job. But you don't want them to be in toxicity. You don't want them to be in a situation where they're set up to fail. But I think this is why the NFL's not a quarterback development league. I mean, you're seeing a lot of these young kids. Anthony Richardson's coming back, though, for the Colts against the Jets. Let's see what he does after he's sat. You saw Bryce Young get sat, and he had to learn from Andy Dalton. And now that he's back in, the Panthers are on a 2-game win streak. So this quarterback development is not as simple as people make it out to be. I know it's a caffeinated society, and everybody wants results right now. You're ordering from Amazon, you're ordering from DoorDash and Grubhub, whatever it is, and you expect it because it's going to be right there in the front of your doorstep. I get it, but quarterback development, this is why we have the NIL. This is also why we have college football. This is why that the both of them are such perfect matches in harmony, because this is allowing the players to gain experience, get much needed snaps, and get everything that they need to by the time they come into an atmosphere of coming into the NFL, because it's a totally different speed. But I think in the end of the day, where you land does matter. Now, I know the other side of it is because we've seen this in the past. John Elway didn't want to join the Colts. Look at what the Colts were. He goes to the Denver Broncos. Okay, I can understand that. And I can understand the Manning family. Now, granted, Peyton did go to the Colts, but Eli didn't want to go to the Chargers. Okay, I mean, the Chargers have had a reputation of being cheap and not really taking care of their star quarterbacks at times. But it worked out perfectly because then that's when Phillip Rivers, they did the swap, and then both teams were satisfied with their quarterbacks. Only difference is one got 2 rings, one didn't get anything. And that's usually because of the history of the organization. But still, I think with Shedeur Sanders, scrambled quarterback, moves out the pocket. He's very mobile, and he's also very strong in the pocket. But that's why I think if you're the Raiders, this may be the most ideal situation that you could go to, because they're trying to get the toxicity out. This was their plan when they first moved to Las Vegas. They wanted to get that stuff out, leave it in Oakland, and then start new in Vegas. Fan bases was going to be cleaned up. Culture was going to be a lot better. And with the more money in cap, it would be better. It would be a better situation. So that's why I think it makes a ton of sense. So let's see. Let's see what happens from there. But I can understand from a parent's perspective that you don't want your kids to be set up for failure. You want to set them up with the best successes, but you also don't want to coddle them, and you also don't want to sound like it's a dictating thing. I mean, look at the NBA with the Ball family. Okay, how many times have we seen LeVar Ball literally going on media and trying to dictate exactly with where his kids were going to go? Lonzo went to the Lakers, and LaMelo goes to Charlotte, and LiAngelo. The kids ultimately, decide their destiny. They decide what's going to happen, and they're going to make the most of it. So, yeah. I don't know. I just truthfully think that, again, however this is going to be explained and however that we're going to see this, I'm a wait and see type guy. I won't get into with where, this is how it's going to work. You may see that in media, but it doesn't always look like that. I mean, you know how many times politicians literally throw over a lot of these other things, and we think this is the proposition that's going to happen, and then it didn't happen. I'm kind of like, slow down, pump the brakes, let's just see what happens. But I feel like the ideal situation, it was clear. I think the Raiders are bought into the idea. With the amount of cap, with the amount of the draft picks, why not? Garner's not the answer, but he is a bridge, and he's been through this before. So it's like, I think that would be the ideal situation at the end of the day.
So, yeah, and I know that we talked about it yesterday and everything verbatim. I mean, I think that they're all just being dramas and divas and everything like that. And I do think that, if Shedeur was my son, so here's what I told my dad told me when I was younger. Oh, I don't want to do that. Well, I don't care what you want. You're gonna sit there and you're gonna like it, or you're gonna eat your food and you're gonna like it. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't care that you don't want to go play, or that Eli didn't want to go play for the Chargers. Like, if I was Eli's dad, I would have sat there and been like, you know what? You're going to play for the Chargers and you're going to like it. And or John Elway, I don't want to play for the Colts. I don't care if you don't want to play for the Colts. You're going to play there and you're going to like it. Like, these people are too damn soft for, and trying to overrule a multi-billion-dollar organization and hold them hostage just because they're not catering to their every whim and catering to how they want to do things and everything. You know what? I don't care if Dion doesn't want his son playing in Cleveland. good. I don't want him in Cleveland. I don't want that toxicity. I don't want that drama, and I don't.
Well, that's where you go to the next plan. I mean, again, many situations can tend to change. That's why the draft is always so unique in that, because not everyone is going to go to, like, look, we'll have projections, we'll have like predictions of guys that they're good that may land in this spot, but it's not always that 110% accurate. I mean, you're going to have a few percenters that are out there who just get that, they get that lucky. But I mean, it's very rare.
I mean, and also to try to sit there and control, like, say that you're going to step in for Travis and stuff too, and like try to dictate where he goes. He is not your kid. You do not have to sit there and try to convince an organization like, hey, I'm like, I don't care that everybody's like, well, they're practically kids. They're or it's practically his kid. Like, he's there all the time. Yes, but Deion is not his father, not his mother, not his father. You do not dictate where Travis goes. If a team wants to draft Travis, you have no authority to step in and say whether or not he can go to the Patriots or go to the Jaguars or go to the Giants or the Saints or whatever it may be. You have no authority whatsoever to dictate where Travis goes. Shedeur,
and you know what's funny?
Fine. If you want to step in and say something, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to deal with that. But Travis, no.
Well, it's funny because, and I think this is where it's the good news for Travis Hunter's, for his standpoint, because arguably I think he should be the number one prospect taken off the board. If you ask me, from an athlete as a two-way player, obviously he's going to be a full-time corner. Okay, but you could use him as a gadget player if you wanted to. But I think it's clear. But it's going to, and it's funny because sometimes at the closer we get to the end of the season, the teams are going to start to look into their crystal ball and they're going to try to see, well, what does the future hold for us? Clearly, we're not sitting in the now. And that's a lot of the teams like the Patriots, the Saints, the Jags, even Cleveland. They're not sitting in the now right now. But they could see where their future is beholden to them. Because if that's the case, that's where they have to really look at the positions that they have and try to fill in those holes come the draft and the free agency. But we'll wait and see. But I think with Travis, it's a better situation. With Shedeur, maybe a little different. But, in the end, we're not always going to be 110% accurate. I know a lot of people have projections. A lot of people have predictions. But these are some hypothetical things. That's the thing. They're hypotheticals for now until we get into draft night on day one, and then that's when we really will see what the answer may turn out to be. That's how it is.
And it is just kind of crazy that Deion, like, if Shedeur goes number one overall, let's say the Patriots are picking number one. Right now it's the Jags, but let's say the Patriots pick number one.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Deion would not step in if it's the New England Patriots.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the organization is bad right now, and they do not have a lot of good pieces offensively, but defensively they still look amazing.
What's saving them is the fact that they've got their franchise quarterback in Drake May.
Yeah, and
that's the saving grace.
Defensively, they still look great, but not only that, being the number one overall pick in the NFL draft comes with a lot of advantages. Not just that, a like $9 million bonus more than any other draft pick out there. So I'm sure if Travis is looking to be the number one overall pick, Deion will not step in and say anything to anybody about that.
No, I think it'll be clear.
Yeah.
But I do think that if it came down to, because it's a tight race between Jacksonville and New England, but like we talked about before, I think because of where both those organizations, what it'll stand by. If the Jags get the number one, that means Travis is going to have a lot more of a workload than people think. Whereas if he goes to New England, his outlier is Christian Gonzalez. And boy, is that a perfect tandem with the two of them. I mean, left and right, forget about it. Nobody, especially when you're playing offenses like Buffalo with Josh Allen twice a year and Tua and the Dolphins twice a year with that speed. And I know it's kind of, we don't think this way, but even with the Jets, even with some of their options, having those two shutdown corners only means the aerial coverage game is going to be fantastic for New England. Then, now that they have a franchise quarterback, they can set up a line, they can get them some weapons, and then that's where I think the Patriots, but of course, the real question mark is this the right coach with Jerome Mayo to do that?
Uh-huh.
You know, because you can have the players, you can have the franchise quarterback, and you can have the players, but it's the coaching aspect to making sure that everything is consistent, to project it to make that happen. But that's where I think, you know, for New England, I think it would be perfect. But Jacksonville,
they got Campbell. They got Campbell as their corner, and
they do.
Good, so
they do. But I think, I mean, I just think Jacksonville has a lot more bigger issues than I think New England does. If we really would look at it,
I think Jacksonville, the only thing they're missing really is a good head coach and a solid secondary, because the secondary is really weak in Jacksonville.
Well, think about it. They traded away their left tackle in Cam Robinson. So they're needing a line. But of course, yeah, defensive players. I think, and I'm not 110% sold with Tank Bigsby, but of course, I think that if they made a deal with Travis Etienne and dealt him away, get picks, I think you should consider middle of the pack somewhere. I think they may draft a running back, because it's always good to have at least one in the tail end. So, but yeah, I think it'll be interesting. But still, I just think sometimes the way certain terminology sometimes usually gets people worked up. In some areas, it does, because it's like, why would this happen? But this is why I try to be a balance enforcer for what a lot of these mean, you know, because again, I'm not going to jump up on the bandwagon and basically say, well, oh, this is what's really going to happen. No, I'd like to be the median on both sides, so it provides clarity. But yeah, we'll wait and see what happens from here. But good stuff, man. Prime predictions later on in the show. I'm really excited for this, but you know, there is a ton of stay away games, but you know, we'll get into it. But I'm looking at a lot of those lines, and I'm like, there are some of them that I think was pretty clear. Lots of ones, but I think for the right reasons. But we'll break it here a little later on in the show. Well, guys, like we've said, as we have a on the show, BetUS has been bet lines, and also with their world-class that has been great for over 30 years in the country. Something for everyone to check out and see what BetUS has cooking. We're very thankful for BetUS being our partners here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. We're thankful of it. In the seasons of giving, you know, BetUS is always giving you the best to keep you on the edge of your game, even with your very own account manager, so that you get the best experiences when you utilize BetUS for yourself. All the best betting lines, from parlay to single parlay or a single betting line for you to choose from, whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, college football, whatever it may be. BetUS has you covered in all of that to give you the best guarantees. Also, when you sign up today with $50 or more in your deposits, so that means the more you end up adding on, 125% bonuses in your first 3 deposits of up to $2,000. More room for more fun, more opportunities for you to win on daily contests that are going on every single day of the week. BetUS wants you to enjoy their world-class sportsbook and their world-class lines that they have for you to get on the edge of your game. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or seek therapy in your respective states, because BetUS wants you to gamble responsibly, not recklessly. with BetUS, where the game begins.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Check out the Con Man live on the Sports Corner, coming to a screen near you, giving you the greatest stories from basketball legends you've never seen before. Sharing their glory, building the toughness, and how they show off their swag. But only one man knows all that, and that's the Con Man. Join Michael Conceição, the Con Man, at the Sports Corner, Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sportsway Network.
Back here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. What an eventful weekend we have. So tonight is the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. You know, these kinds of fights I've been seeing, you know, in at least since it started, right? I mean, you could see with what the state of boxing looks like. I mean, to be honest with you, it hasn't been as big of a boom with like how we had the best pound for pound fighters in the world. Okay, we haven't had it with a bigger push since we had Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Oscar De La Hoya, multiple great fighters that I grew up watching. But usually, sometimes with boxing matches, it's a, you know what it's like is it's an invitation to a show that you may only go at least once a year, right? And think about it. We sometimes have, like here in where I live in the part of Colorado, we have what's called Parker Days. It's like a whole entire festival. They got the whole carnival set. You know, you got a lot of these, you know, concessions where they got the gigantic lemonades. You got the deep fried the deep fried funnel cakes. So it's an invitation. It's an invitation to a fun time and a fun show. So Mike Tyson, I'll tell you one thing. Tyson is such a scary human being in his nature. I mean, from the stature build, and then at the same time with what his reputation and what he's been known for a very long time. But he's been a very talented boxer. Okay, the knockouts that we've seen from him were totally just, it was fun to watch. Okay. And as far as from growing up in my hometown in Las Vegas, seeing him in the gym, seeing him going and running laps around in some of the parks that I've known, Mike Tyson was just that different build of a fighter. Now, I understand Jake Paul, a YouTuber, like his brother Logan Paul, who's now in the WWE. But the thing about Jake Paul is that, like, I've seen this right now with everything in this society. Because at my age of 29, in the millennials group, because right now, like I tell Chase all the time, we are the new media. Because we watched ESPN, we watched Fox Sports, we watched a lot of the big cats up top. And when we're trying to give our balanced, unbiased takes, that's where a lot of people are starting to grow into. Everybody has a podcast these days. Athletes have a podcast. You know, celebrities have a podcast. That's where everybody's seeing the money, right? It's the new social norm. And so even when you look at Jake Paul, it's just like when we look at finances, right? Mike Tyson had the old school, still works type mentality. He had, you had your normal 401ks, you have your normal investments and your retirement savings and all the rest of it, right? The old school financing and the way that you would structurize your finances to where you are growing your money and then you're also investing so you have a great retirement. And then you look at the Jake Pauls of the world where there's all this new technology stuff, right? It's the clickbaits, it's the Bitcoins, it's the it's the cryptos, all that stuff, and I've never really been a big fan of it. And the reason of it is because there's not a large track record, at least let's say within a decade. There's never been a long track record of successes for stuff like that. But they're fun, at least maybe for a one-time deal. But I'll be honest with you, I'm never investing in crypto or whatever. I just have no need. And to be honest with you, it's kind of not my spiel. But it's there. And lots of millennials and even younger people, they're into that stuff. I don't understand it. I don't get it. But you know what? Who cares? But you start to see from the old school of Mike Tyson with the way that things have been fighting, the way that fighters have been built, and then you look at the Jake Pauls of the world to where this is kind of the new social norm. Do I agree with it? Not always. But I think tonight it's an invitation into either your favorite country fair, even with your festivals, whatever it may be. I mean, I tell Chase all the time, I go to concerts and I'm like, man, what a show that was. You go to concerts, you go to art museums, you go to a lot of places that unlike a sports game, right? Unlike a sport event atmosphere, you go there to have a good time. You go there to kind of check out something that you never really see yourself going into for multiple times a year, right? It's a once a year type thing. So I think tonight it'll be interesting to watch, but I'm telling you, I think at his age, Mike Tyson, with how he trains himself, how he prepares himself, I think is just, it's out of this world. But that's where you got to respect the old school. So, yeah, Mike Tyson, Jake Paul. Anybody's fight the second that they're in the ring. Chase with the news.
This is the Hot Press.
Fun weekend, man. It's a fun kind of weekend, but it's that kind of weekend. I mean, boxing fight, UFC fight, NFL Sunday slate. So we got a lot. We got a lot this weekend.
Got a lot to look forward to. Definitely a lot of big games in the NFL to definitely look forward to this week, including the Bills and Chiefs and whatnot.
Yeah.
But speaking of the NFL, there was, rumors reported by Boomer Esiason, who ended up speaking with a lot of NFL executives and people close to him, and he was sitting out there saying that John Gruden, a former NFL head coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Raiders twice, has been drawing a lot of interest in teams, and he has been wanting to come back to the NFL and coach again. And I made a video on this earlier saying that I think that the two teams to coach would be going to the Bears to coach and, get that culture switched around and make it to where Caleb Williams can play well, or go to Jacksonville, because more than likely Doug Peterson is going to be fired at some point this season. I can guarantee that. I can also see him going to Jacksonville.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I look at some of the locations right now in some of these franchises that would be, they need more than just, a coordinating coach. Because I'll be honest with you, since we talked about, Cliff Kingsbury and Ben Johnson, when I think about it, because I know everybody. I mean, this has been a push since Sean McVay was a coach. But the difference is, you look at exactly with how those guys were built. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and several others. I mean, they've developed themselves a culture. But as far as for Shanahan, we know that he's still kind of lingering on it because we've seen what he is as a coordinator, and we see that like the playbook and the style, I mean, it works. But does that move enough to change a culture? Sometimes that doesn't. Because here's the thing. I grew up old school to where this was how I was coached. I was coached pretty harshly. But the reason for that is because you need a mixture of setting up the, but you also need to have a mixture of building some toughness. You know, you're callousing the player. So as a coach, and I was very thankful for my stepdad, because he coached me in and even for my father, they both coached me in several different ways. And what was the outlier for my pops is that he saw the flaws. He saw the things that, you know, mentally that you would see for a player. And you could see the mental frustration. But the thing of it is that he's like, I get it. I understand it. But this time around, don't sit in the negative. Clean it up, you know, and even for sometimes, even if you were being forced on the bench, it's like, sit down right now. We'll talk about this later. But we have to now start thinking situationally. Some of these coordinators, I'll be honest, they're not really built like that. Not a lot of them are built like that because they're too quiet, they're too precise. So when it's time where you really need to get into a player's face, if they're out there wilding out, what are they going to say to them? You know, a perfect example. When Brandon Staley coached the team, he saw how just absolutely like the players gave up. And at the time when Joey Bosa threw his helmet down in the playoff game twice, Staley just goes and picks it up. If that were Jim Harbaugh at the time, he'd be grabbing that thing and he'd be screaming in your face. Okay, Harbaugh has lightened up. But man, have you seen how strong that culture is now? It's because there has to be room for that. Okay, there should never be room to where you don't bark at all, because then people don't think you got a bite. People don't think you got a backbone in you to bark. So that's why, like, when I think about it with Chicago, how extremely difficult that has to be to handle the culture. I think you really have to find a culture. With John Gruden, I mean, the culture was kind of clear with the Raiders. I mean, do I think
last season with the Raiders? So
yeah. Well, but look at even with that time. I mean, there was a lot of things that were going wrong with the Raiders. But can we think any different from the organization's history? They've had so many waves of toxicity. I mean, I've been there with the Tom Favors years and then the Kiffin years, with all these coaches and all these quarterbacks. I watched it, I'm like, what in the hell is going on?
Offensively, John Gruden would be great for the Bears, and you know, he won't have his guy Mike Mayock in there. Ryan Poles will be the one, you know, making the decisions upstairs. So he just has to worry about this.
So I agree.
And that's it.
I agree.
So that'll be a great fit. Speaking of the offensive side of things, there was an interview with Jahmyr Gibbs today, and it came out and said, the two teams that were very interested in him in the draft, in the Lions, a very unexpected, you know, team that when he got the call. It was reported that the Dallas Cowboys, if he was there at 26, that they, and then it was also told to get Jahmyr Gibbs if he was available around that 15-16 range. That just goes to show you how much value a high-class running back is going for now in the NFL. And what does this have to say about Ashton Genty and where he's going to go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing. This is why that I think when I look at the Cowboys, I mean, there's a multitude of things that are going wrong. But, I mean, you're not going to have – ultimately, I think what it sounds like, and it seems pretty clear, I think they're going to shut down Dak Prescott. $60 million a year. Why would you want to risk it in a situation and in a season that I think kind of looked like a lost cause?
Well, he's having surgery, so
he is. So that's why I'm saying. I mean, he's having surgery. So why go through with that when the season's already a lost cause? I understand it. It's a pride and ego thing for the Cowboys because, I mean, Jerry Jones is kind of feeling all of it. I mean, we can kind of see that clearly. As far as Mike McCarthy's future, I don't know. I think in the end, if he gets fired, I don't know who could possibly be that fit. I mean, we talk about Belichick, we talk about Vrabel, we talk about some of these other coaches, but I'll be honest with you, like Chicago, Dallas is right in the same ballparks. I mean, look at a lot of these sports markets. LA, New York, Chicago, Dallas, like in Texas. I mean, these cities, it's not like when you walk into, like, for example, an Indianapolis. Okay, Indiana is it's more college town, but yes, they do invest with the Pacers and with the Colts, but it's not a big of a market. And sometimes when you get teams that are not in a bigger pressurizing media market, like those states I mentioned, that's where you really have to have a culture guy in the building to really make that happen. Now, with Andy Reid in Kansas City, I mean, because the Chiefs are such a big brand name, and I mean, they've established the culture this way. But you look at how the state of the Midwest is usually looked like this way, right? It's more collegiate. There's not a ton of cameras in your face. So you're not really getting a whole lot of that exposure. But with the Cowboys, there's just such multitudes of things going wrong. But this is why I feel like that if they are if you're the Cowboys, you don't draft Ashton Jeanty. I don't know what. I don't know what it is that the Cowboys would be looking for in the end. I just think, I mean, whatever you do with Zeke is whatever. But I can see it with how New England, how they utilize Zeke as a red zone threat running back. Okay, situational wise. Because he's gotten slower and because the injuries have really piled up in his career is why I think he's a perfect red zone option. That's fine. I just don't see him as an everyday back because he's gotten slower. The injuries have riddled up, and at the same time, there's just not a ton of efficiency. So I think when you get a guy like Jeanty, look at what they've done in the previous drafts. They went and drafted offensive linemen for whatever reason. Because you're paying Dak $60 million a year, because you need to fix that run game, and the defense will find its way to climb back. Now, I just think in that kind of regard, I don't know. I would very much think very different about the Cowboys post that first day if they don't take a running. I'm not saying you should be your be-all, end-all, but Ashton Jeanty, like most teams, if you don't get your desired position player, like the best one in the country, then be like with what the Raiders did, take the best collegiate athlete on the board. I mean, that's what they did with Brock Bowers. That's why I think Bowers, he's going to have such a positive upside because by the time that Travis Kelce is retired, Brock Bowers is going to be the best tight end in that division, without a doubt. And I think he's also going to be quite he'll be a game changer by then because of what he does as from a tight end set, as being that kind of guy that can pass block, a guy that can pass catch, and he does everything. Like it's I think that's where you kind of really have to draw that line. You should be taking the best collegiate athlete from what you see on the stand of it off this board. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I would think very differently of the Cowboys if they did not do that, because then I'm kind of looking at going, okay, here we go again. How long of this are Cowboy fans going to look at this? I mean, how long?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like if we can't get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders to come to Cleveland, I would love for Cleveland to draft Ashton Genty, especially like if Nick Chubb doesn't get back to his former self, or even just to be, a duo guy, like, Chubb and Genty together. That'd be amazing. I would love that. Now, we have seen all the damage that has been caused to a lot of, sports stadiums in Florida due to the hurricane.
Yeah.
We know that the Tampa Bay Rays stadium is completely destroyed, and they are working on trying to build a new one. They're going to start from the ground up and build them a new one, which they've been asking for years. However, they have recently found a new home for them to play the 2025 season with, and right now it only holds 11,000 fans. And this has to be concerning for a lot of the Rays players and everything, and the Rays organization, because what are they going to do with the fans that want to come see them play, and especially if they're going to be good?
Well, here's the problem. I mean, this is kind of the same similar issue that baseball is dealing with the A's. I mean, you saw they took out Oakland off their name. So they're just the Athletics. For the Tampa Bay Rays, I mean, this has been an ongoing situation. Now, look, a natural disaster is very unfortunate for a lot of them, okay? And Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, I mean, they have been in discussions with potentially relocating them in Florida, wherever that they feel.
Orlando.
I believe Orlando would be the best spot if that's what they decide.
There was talks because there was talks about a specific person down there was thinking about purchasing the team, moving them to Orlando, and paying for the stadium, and the stadium would have been just family friendly, but also would have been amazing for just that area. That was the talks of what we were hearing around the MLB, was Orlando would possibly it'd be the Orlando Rays rather than the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah, and that's why I think, I mean, I would like to kind of see with how they pan this out. I mean, I think now because of the natural disaster, it's really kind of forced their hand to now start talking about it, make some sort of initiatives, but I mean, listen, this is unfortunate with the number of attendance. I mean, what can you do? It's hard enough, because again, this from what the A's are currently going, the A's are dealing with a clash with the owner, because we know with what John Fisher has done. I mean, John Fisher really screwed over the city of Oakland and their fans. So, which is why I feel for a lot of them.
They were the last Oakland team there.
Yep. Yeah, the last Oakland sports team. Last time sports will ever be played in that city. So, but with the Rays, I mean, you're talking about refurbishing, the stadium, and so because you're trying to account for more fans, more than 11,000. So, and let's not forget the Rays came in at a time when George Steinbrenner was doing the league a favor. Okay, he lived in St. Petersburg, he lived in Florida, and the best thing that you could do so he could watch Yankee games as he got older was to be in Florida. And that's where the Devil Rays came in. So to put him in the AL East, to where they're facing the Yankees multiple times a year, I mean, that's kind of where that was. And
that's where they're playing at, is the Yankees farm system.
Yeah.
That's where their new home is the Yankees AAA farm club, I believe, is where they're going to play at. So,
I mean, you got to think. I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays, I mean, when we had that COVID year, they played in Buffalo. Okay, but they because of what all was going on in Canada, because they closed their doors. Nobody, like, they shut down Rogers Center. It wasn't in damages, but it was like this was just kind of the unfortunate norm. So they played in Buffalo until they were able to get back into Canada up north and play in the Rogers Center. Whereas in this predicament, now you have a natural disaster to where you have no choice but to be playing, in this facility. And for the A's, I mean, they're sharing the ballpark with Sacramento, which it kind of sucks either way. So that's why I'm like, I kind of feel for the Rays and for the A's for those reasons. Because here's the thing. If you could take any advices, just take advices from the Blue Jays, how that worked. I mean, the fact that they had to play in Buffalo in the AAA team, like, it's hard. Yeah. So, yeah. I'm curious to see how that goes, but at the same time, you're just kind of forced with your hand. It's unfortunate from here.
Now, the last little bit of news that I've got, and I don't know if it's true because I didn't get a chance to look this one up, but Northwestern is closer to the Chicago area, right?
It is. It is.
So, from what I've been hearing, is Northwestern is trying to redo their whole football arena and everything. So what I saw is that they had put a makeshift football field on Wrigley Field for tomorrow's game to be played on with Ohio State.
Yeah.
And that'll be interesting to see how that's gonna work for everybody.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting. You know what's crazy though too? I mean, these stadium settings, because you know what's one that I'm looking forward to for the next year baseball season is the one that's going to be played in Bristol with the Reds and the Braves. I don't know how that's going to work, but sometimes, I mean, what's another thing, and I saw this source, but the Orioles again are doing more alterations on that left field side. What more do they need? I don't know. I don't know what more alterations they need to do. But that is going to be interesting, though, with Ohio State and Northwestern. I'm kind of curious. Curious what they'll see. But we've seen the Stadium Series in hockey with, them being played in ballparks, them being played on certain fields. We've seen it, but yeah.
From what I saw in the photos and everything, it looks like they took out a good chunk of the bleachers on the left field side, just to accommodate that, and then they'll put them back.
Yeah. So if they're capable of doing it, I mean, it is kind of incredible, how people alterate some of these ballparks and stadiums. I mean, it really is incredible. I mean, I see this.
It truly is.
I see this with arenas. I mean, I watched a little small documentary of when hockey games go on. The temperature, they have to keep it for the ice to stay maintained. And the funny thing is because they have to swap out those boards for when the NBA teams play. So they have that hard wood. But then when when a hockey team comes in, they have a certain temperature they manage. It's what makes it stay cold. And then when they design the ice, with the lines and the sponsorships, it's pretty incredible. So
it is, and then the fact is that for Wrigley Field, with it being the second oldest baseball stadium out there,
that's right.
The fact is that they're going to put back the original seats that were in the stadium. After tomorrow's game's over with, it's going to be very interesting to see. Yeah,
I'll be watching Ohio State because at the end of the day, we kind of know what's at stake right now with everything going on with the playoff prediction and all that. But that should be interesting of a setting to see, but I'll be more focused in on just the gameplay. I've kept my eye on them, so we'll see what happens this weekend. That interesting stuff. All right, Chase with the news.
This is the Hot Press.
All right, so it is that time again. Week 11, Chase and I, we're going to be breaking down these games. Here we go again with our prime predictions.
Let's turn it up. It's Jake's prime predictions.
Definitely my favorite game of the week. And of course, usually I don't always like them because of the betting line, but because it's a home game for the Steelers, I'll take the Steelers at +3. So my big takeaway of it is I love with how Russell Wilson has been playing. Up to this point, he has 787 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, and 1 pick since they decided to sit Justin Fields. You see the difference right now with the efficiency of offense because Russell Wilson is capable of extending the plays. Mike Tomlin builds that kind of trust to where Russell is just playing quarterback and the defense does the rest. Now, we know that Lamar Jackson, it's an important game for him either way because they have not had a great record against them. But as far as at home, comfortable, what the Pittsburgh Steelers always love to do is they roughhouse a lot of these teams, and then you'll see with how they look next week by the injury report. That's just who they are. They'll score up points, and then they roughhouse you on defense. I will take the Steelers here in this game with +3, and with an AFC North matchup, give me the Steelers to win 24-23. I'm going to keep this short and simple. Mac Jones is at quarterback. Lions right now are clearly playing for something. I'm going to take the Lions at -14. I just think this is, if this is not the game enough for Doug Peterson to get fired, I don't know what the cons are doing. But I think the Lions strong at home, Mac Jones at quarterback. I don't see this changing any other way. I'll take the Lions. Sorry, but it's going to be such a beat down, 38-10. Now, this is an interesting game for me because even though that I do like the Rams in this situation, I'm going to take the Patriots 4.5. Drake May right now has arrived in this league. Now, he may not have the weapons that he desires, but what he does have is that he's got the capability of being that franchise quarterback. I think we kind of see this week in, week out. So the Patriots, and right now, the difficulty for the Rams, this Rams offense has been finding ways to struggle on offense to get it going. I don't know what the deal is. I think part of that is it could be injuries. It could be a bit of inconsistency. Some guys coming back, they're not quite themselves. But I think it is interesting to note that the Rams, even though that I still think they could win this game, the Patriots at home and with the defense, I mean, they've been handling at least some teams for as much as they can. I will take the Rams to win 24-21, but the 4.5 seems pretty safe and guaranteeable for me. I do believe, and I don't like this matchup as a whole. It's a stay-away game for me. But I'll take the Cleveland Browns on the road here with Jameis Winston against his former team in the New Orleans Saints. The Browns, we know, have been a tire fire right now because of the way that the offense had been looking. But look at that pass rush that they have with Myles Garrett. He gave the Chargers fits. He gave a bunch of teams serious problems, and I think that's kind of the big takeaway right now for Cleveland. And the New Orleans Saints, they've already fired Dennis Allen. This defense looks old. The offense right now with Derek Carr, I mean, who knows? There might be a new sign of life, but I don't think that the Saints might have enough of that oomph to really kind of get over with that pass rush, and even with the secondaries that the Browns have, hopefully with Denzel Ward back and even with Greg Newsome. I'll take the Browns on the road and take them to win 27-23. Perfect opportunity, and now let's see what Anthony Richardson looks like against the Jets as he comes back. I'll take the Colts at +4. Listen, the Jets are pissing me off on the offense and what they look like as a team. The defense looks atrocious since Robert Saleh had been fired. Aaron Rodgers, since he's got Devontae Adams, this offense barely has been putting up points. I think it's clear that right now this team is not looking its best. But let me just speak about this for the Colts. Laiatu Latu is quietly making a case as a rookie on the defensive side of the ball with pass rush. The Colts right now, we know that they are trying to build this consistency up. Anthony Richardson comes back. We know Joe Flacco did not look good in the last few weeks. Hopefully this is some confidence build now for Anthony Richardson. He takes a break. He gets a chance to kind of take a step back. Let's see what the Colts have in store on the road. I will take the Colts against the Jets because I don't trust that team at all. I think right now this is clearly an absolute sellout, and it's so bad. Give me the Colts +4. I think it's guaranteeable 24-23. I know you guys may be shocked that I'm taking the Vikings here at -6, but hear me out. Okay, I think the offense will figure itself out, and they'll clean up a lot of their mistakes. Here's the takeaway, though. Did you watch Will Levis last week against the Chargers? Sacked 7 times, but the problem I have with Will Levis is he held on to the ball for too long. He's been pivoting forward 2 times, and what does that do? That allows for edge rushers like Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa and company to now collapse the pocket in, and they get him from behind. What do you think that's going to look like against that Minnesota defense that's been holding up a lot of these teams? Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, and even with their pass rush. Dallas Turner, I feel like, is going to have a hell of a game against the Titans. Because right now, this stuff with Will Levis, I don't know if he's able to fix that, but I think it might be a little bit less than what happened against the Chargers. But for back-to-back really good defenses, that's harsh for the Titans. Give me the Vikings here on the road in Tennessee, 28-20. I think the defense and the pressures are going to be enough for them to hopefully get their confidence back on offense and get this thing rolling. Like the Dolphins to win, I don't like the points that they're getting. Give me the Raiders +7.5. Listen, hear me out here. The Dolphins' offense looked pretty slow, and it's not quite hitting its consistency. We know it to a back. They're trying to really revolve. They're trying to revive the offense that they have been putting into for the last couple months. But the Dolphins right now, offensively, it's getting slow. Hopefully they clean this problem up. But however, for the Raiders in this particular situation, I've taken them before at 7.5, and I was pretty damn good about it. And so with Max Crosby on the road, granted, I think they'll lose this game because of, drafting spots, but they'll be good enough to at least have that defense play for something. I think they roughhouse the Dolphins. I think that offense is going to have some early struggles in this game, but I think they still come away with a win, but it's not going to be as attractive as most people would think. 23-20 +7.5. That's a little bit of some love I have for the Raiders. Now, because of the woes that's happening right now with the Bears, they did fire Shane Waldron. Who knows exactly how that offense will look like? I'm still going to be confident enough to take the Packers here at -6. And the reason of it is, yes, I know Jordan Love hasn't looked the best, but the other difference of it is Caleb Williams got sacked 9 times. I mean, and he's getting brutally hit. There are teammates that are looking for him to get benched, not on a negative side, but more importantly for the sake of the franchise, because this is a disaster. The offense since the bye week I think they are now the worst in the NFL in terms of points. This is bad for the Chicago Bears. For the Packers, however, Xavier McKinney has looked so good. And by the way, they did trade away Preston Smith, but did you look at that linebacker, Edgerrin Cooper? Man, does he look good. I think the Packers defense, with an atrocious Bears offensive line, I think are going to give hell to Caleb Williams. And who knows how this is going to pan out and bear out for the Bears. Give me the Packers with -6. I think they're capable of covering. 27-20 is my final score. All right, so I did watch the Broncos in the past against an NFC South opponent, and I know with what they're capable of. With 1 point, that's a steal. Give me the Broncos here at -1. Let me tell you something as well. The Broncos this year are almost looking to go 4-0 against NFC South opponents. They gave the business to the Saints, they beat the Panthers, and they held the Buccaneers to 7 points. You know how many points they've generated of those opponents before meeting Atlanta? Almost up to 87 points altogether against the NFC South alone. I like the Broncos in this spot because the fact of the matter is, the Falcons' problems is they cannot generate pass rush. They can't get to the quarterback. So what does that mean? That means Sean Payton, who is very familiarized with the NFC South and knows exactly what to do in this spot, Bo Nix will be comfortable in that pocket, which means he'll have precise, accurate throws. I also do think that there will be opportunities where he will be using his legs. I like the Broncos in this spot, and they need this win for playoff hopes. I'll take the Broncos comfortably here in Denver, 27-21, and I think they improve to 4-0, a clean sweep against NFC South opponents this year. Tough spot for the Seattle Seahawks, considering with how Geno Smith has looked. But as I've looked at the injury reports, it is trending up, and it's looking like gold for the San Francisco 49ers. Give me the Niners at 6.5. Christian McCaffrey is back, and a lot of their pieces outside of Brandon Ayuk and company, I think this is a perfect prime spot at home, division rival game. This is not something that the 49ers want to take very, very easily. The Niners, we know when they have at least majority of their group, Brock Purdy and company, they actually play their best. The offense leads it up, and they put points up on the board. The other thing is the defense, though, they are capable of handling their own, and usually against division rival opponents. Now, we know with a rookie coach in Mike McDonald, this right now has not looked good for the Seahawks offensively. Geno's been starting to get his struggles. I think this is a perfect prime spot for the 49ers here. Give me the Niners at home, 28-21 against their division rival Seattle Seahawks. All right, this could potentially be the game of the week, right? Chiefs and Bills. Can the Bills actually overcome their woes against the Kansas City Chiefs? I don't know. I smell something a little bit fishy. I will take the Chiefs plus 1 point. Hear me out. I know the Chiefs. They're without Harrison Butker for 4 weeks. Yes, I know that they're without a bunch of their stars outside of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones. But what the Chiefs have done, it's very hard to bet against them because of the success they're having situationally. The Bills, however, they're without Keon Coleman. We know they get Matt Milano back. And right now, Amari Cooper's questionable. I don't know how the Bills may end up looking in this spot, but at home, they cannot afford to lose. But this is such a pressurizing situation because the Chiefs' record, they're trying to, they're kind of treading the waters right now with where they're at situationally. I'll take the +1 and a gut feeling of mine because I've been going back and forth in this. I think the Chiefs might pull something out, and it's going to look ugly, but on a 1 point margin, I think the Chiefs might escape this one to improve to 10-0, 21-20. Sunday night football game at its finest, Bengals and the Chargers. I know a lot of people are going with the Bengals, but I'm going to go with the Chargers here at home. Listen, in Los Angeles, it's a perfect atmosphere you want to be at. Now, here's the other takeaway. The only 2 players that the Chargers on defense are missing that are questionable and that are on game time decisions is Khalil Mack and Dean Leonard. They're getting Christian Fulton back the corner. They're also getting back Trey Pipkins, the interior guard. The Cincinnati Bengals, we know, are getting T. Higgins back. But I've watched these two corners that they got out of the draft, Tariq Steele and Cam Hart. These two have stepped up in a massive way. Now, the only takeaway for this game is the Bengals need this more than what the Chargers do, because the Chargers are on a 3-game win streak. This is the tougher portion of their schedule now, because then they got to face Baltimore next week in the Hard Bowl on Monday Night Football. But I think with this game in particular, the Broncos, are going to do business against Atlanta, but the Bengals want to keep their playoff hopes alive. I don't know. I think, honestly, the Chargers, with as close as these games have gotten, and how the defense, number one scoring defense in the league, they haven't given up more than 20 points. Let's see if they keep that streak going already for 9 weeks. Give me the Chargers here at home, 27-24. And the Monday Night Football game that at first I thought could be atrocious, but I looked at the line, and the line looks atrocious. I'm going to take the Cowboys plus 7.5. Listen, I love the Texans, but that interior offensive line is so suspect outside of their tackles that I look at the Cowboys, and I know that they're not starting Trey Lance, okay? It's Cooper Rush. And we know what Cooper Rush has been when they put in the backup. Sometimes the offense plays a little bit different. Now, in this type of particular spot, I still do think, though, that the Texans will play better. I just don't think they're going to dominate, as some people may think. I'm a little skeptical with how this is because of the way that offensive line got exposed in the last few weeks. And on a primetime Monday Night Football game in Dallas, where it's battle against the battle for Texans, it's going to be interesting. I think the Texans improve and win, but it's not going to come lightly with that 7.5. I'll take the Cowboys points with the Texans winning 24-21. And with that, those are the prime predictions. So,
who'd you have for Cleveland? My wife called me, so I missed that one.
So I am taking the Browns. I am taking the Browns at -1. And here's the reason for that. I don't trust either of the teams, but I will be honest with you. Jameis Winston against his former team in the Saints, I think he's got a better edge than right now with what the Saints have. Derek Carr, he lost Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, and right now this offense looks so bad, even with Clint Kubiak. Now, I know they fired Dennis Allen, and thank God they did, but the whole point of this is that this is just a mess. The defense is old. There's not a whole lot that I look at. And by the way, the Browns, the only outlier that they have is that nobody can stop Myles Garrett. He gave the Chargers 3 sacks, okay? He gave them fits. But this is why
he did.
This is why New Orleans, that offensive line looks atrocious, but
and they got a rookie on that O-line too.
They do, and this is why that I think the Browns have a much better edge at this, because right now a firing of a coach, yes, I agree. Sometimes teams do play differently when a head coach is fired.
After the first game, usually only the first game. After the second game, they usually have a worse record.
They come right back to earth. You know what they look like towards the end of the season, and that's the norm. But I think for the Browns' sake, because I like their pass rush, I like their corners, that's why I think against the Saints, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of these. There's some that I have difference of opinions on. I think the Seahawks are going to beat the Niners. I think the Bengals will beat the Chargers. The Texans will beat the Cowboys. And I do have the Jets,
which is why I said I do think
beating the Colts.
I do think the Texans will win it. I just don't trust that 7.5 that they're giving them. After what I just saw in the past couple of weeks with that interior offensive line getting exposed, I don't know, man. That 7.5 looks suspect to me.
Yeah, but the Cowboys' interior D-line is not anything to be scared of, because it's not as good as what people, think it is. And then with also with Nico Collins coming back too, it's going to be better.
Well, hopefully that's where Bobby Slowick will clean this stuff up. But yeah, I mean, listen, that Bengals-Chargers game is going to be fun Sunday night. We went back and forth with it because, again, this was one of my 4, if not 5 games I truly like. But, I mean, the Bengals, this is important for them. This is more important than for the Chargers. It really is. But I just look at it. I mean, I would have taken the Bengals had it been like a 3-point margin. But because this is 1, it means that's a toss-up of both teams. I'm very surprised at that because, yeah, I get it with where they're going with the Chargers defense. But remember, the Chargers' 3 games are coming against the Titans, the Saints, and one other sub-500 team. So it's clear that this is right now their biggest competition because for 9 straight weeks, they haven't allowed 20 or more points to opponents. And you're seeing with what Joe Burrow's doing. So that's why if they shut down that overpowering offense with Jamar Chase and with T. Higgins coming back, it's going to be a lot to handle.
The number 1 pick versus the number 6 pick. We'll see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this will be the second time they face. But look, that Kansas City Buffalo game was such a stay-away game for me with just 1 point. I don't trust it. But this is why I went with the Chiefs at +1 because I just know I'm going with my gut with this because of what I've seen from the Chiefs this year. Every single close game, like, it's worked for them. That's why I think with a 1-point margin, I have a 21-20 because I just see this getting very ugly very quickly between both these teams because I'm waiting to hear back on Amari Cooper. He's questionable right now, but they have no Keon Coleman for the Bills. So who knows what – if Amari Cooper is out, then that may be troublesome. But I know they're getting Matt Milano back, which is a good sign on their defense. But I just don't trust it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah. But I don't know. Look, the Niners play different when CMC and George Kittle and at least the important guys outside of Brandon Ayuk. I mean, at least when these guys are back, you don't see a ton of mistakes from Brock Purdy, which is why that I think it's a perfect prime spot for the Niners. I really think that. So that's why I think, and right now, Geno Smith, I think he's kind of hit a wall.
Yeah,
I mean that Seahawks offense looks pretty bad.
I still think that with DK coming back too, I think that it'll spark the offense a bit. I got the Seahawks beating the Niners.
I mean, my big takeaway is if they don't feed Kenneth Walker the ball and that run game is not efficient, that's going to smell a problem. So, yeah, interesting. But, yeah, this was kind of what I went with. Steelers +3, Lions. The only one that I know is so surefire is that Lions -14. Yeah. I don't like high margins points, but Mac Jones is starting. If this is not the game that Doug Peterson gets fired, I'm shocked.
Unless Shad Khan's waiting until the end of the season to fire him. So
he probably could. The Patriots +4.5. Listen, the Rams offensively have been struggling to get anything going, which is kind of surprising. I mean, you watched that last week. That looked bad. So on the road in New England, with Drake May and what he's looked like, they haven't really got a whole lot of film on him. That's going to be pretty interesting. Browns -1, Colts +4. I don't need to say any more about the Jets. This sellout is just terrible. I understand it too. You know, to be honest with you, both these quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers and Anthony Richardson, have been going through a wave. But I'm going to try to, at the very least, be positive about AR because he has been sat down for 2 weeks with Joe Flacco and the way he's looked like. But hopefully they can turn this thing around. And that has happened. I mean, I watched Bryce Young, and when he came back, I mean, they're already on a 2-game win streak. It's not pretty, but something's worked. I am seeing a bit of a transformation with Bryce Young. So I think there's something there. But hopefully Shane Steichen can correct the problems with Anthony Richardson. Vikings -6, Raiders +7.5. I just think 2 in that offense, since he's come back, it has been so sluggish. It feels like they've lost their touch and speed. And by the way, no Tyreek Hill either, because Tyreek is kind of holding to see what the performance of the Dolphins will look like if they're even close to a playoff spot.
Yeah.
So that's the other concern. I'm going with the Packers -6, but it's hard because Caleb Williams has been harassed, and they fired Shane Waldron. I don't know if the offense will look the same, but yeah, I'm a little skeptical there. I'm confident in the Broncos one because they've been handling the business against NFC South opponents. And then there's the Niners, 6.5, Chiefs +1, Chargers -1, and Cowboys +7.5. I mean, these are just all these betting lines of what I do feel like.
Yeah.
But I feel like
I agree.
I do feel like the Texans will still win. I'm just a little skeptical of that line. I think another one that even the Dolphins one, because of how sluggish that offense is. I think the Raiders and Max Crosby, I mean, I still believe the Raiders will not win that game, but I do think they're going to give Tua problems. So we'll see.
Yes,
but I like it this week. I mean, we're coming off of last week where it was kind of strong. So we're just continuing to keep the streak going. So yeah. Good stuff. Good week this week.
Hell yeah.
And we're ending it on a good note with the fact that I'll tune in a bit to that Tyson and Paul fight. I don't care for it as much, but boy, I would love to see Mike Tyson just show off his good old school knockout skill like in his 60s. Seriously.
Yep.
I mean this is like I said, this is like an invitation to like a concert festival, honestly. You go, you have a good time, you go to this stuff once a year, and you ain't going to see this again. So it's like, I don't mind it. I'd like to see a good old knockout punch. But tomorrow, though, with John Jones and Stipe Miocic, boy, is that going to be a lot of fun. I love me some John Bones Jones. And I think a lot of people, they don't realize, like, look, this is a toe-to-toe fight. And I've said this previously in the program in the last few episodes I've talked about with John Jones. There is nobody in the UFC that I can recall. I mean, we've had some greats, but John Jones is one of one. I know not a lot of people really gravitate to I don't think they gravitate because of the history that John Bones Jones has had, but the longest he's defended his belt, and at the same time, like, he's done this twice where people have tried to mug him, took care of that, goes in and gets his title fight the first time, right? The first time he hoisted the belt, he won that. And then defending it, he won that too. So it's like, I can understand that. Look, people are going to feel what they feel. But me personally, I just don't think there's anybody that's comparable than what John Jones has done in his career. I think he's arguably, in my opinion, and I don't know, people might feel a little jaded by this, but I think John Jones is probably one of the greatest UFC fighters I think I've ever watched in my lifetime growing up. Because I started getting into it by middle school. I'm serious. I never knew anything about it with UFC in quite a while until my dad ordered UFC 100, and I got in it. I did. I got right into it, and ever since then, here we are. I watched John Jones by the time he first came in the UFC. What a journey road. I think he takes care of business. Now, there are some, I think there's one more fight I think he might have in him. Maybe a couple more, depending on how he does. But I think after this, that Alex Peoria, I think he's really, really shaping up for that one after this Stipe fight. I think that's what he's primed up for.
There hasn't been this much hype around a boxing match since the Mayweather and Pacquiao fight.
I know. Well, hell, even with the pound-for-pound fighters we've had years ago in the 90s. I mean, yeah. And I watched Mike Tyson literally chew the ear off of a fight, okay? That's just how scary he is. You know what's funny? You know they had to I will say, though, as we're closing the program, but you know what's funny is you know, if you watched the Joe Rogan Experience and all that, you know that they had to have 2 tables to separate. They had to separate with Mike Tyson because he's just that scary as hell. Yeah. Yeah, 2 tables. I don't blame Joe Rogan. He's scared for my life. All right. We got to get out of here. Appreciate everybody for being here up onto the show. What a great week it's been. Same as usual next week. Gonna have a lot of great stuff. Maybe some changes to come up. But that'll be later on. Appreciate everybody for hanging out with us all week long. Enjoy the rest of the week. And we're getting closer into the season of giving. Appreciate everybody. I'm thankful for every single one of you who have tuned in and have been a part of this show. Appreciate everybody. Have a good rest of the night and the rest of your weekend. Tyson and Paul, entertainment, Stipe and John Bones Jones, and NFL Sunday. Doesn't get anything better than that. Appreciate everybody. See y'all next week here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, guys.